Welcome to the lifestyle segment of the weekend show where we will be having a discussion on the fuel scarcity experienced across the country in the past week. Joining us, we have Paul Alaje, who is a senior economist. Good morning, and
Thank you so much
for coming back. We also have Engineer Emmanuel John, Executive Director, Ochuno Mobility. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, what was your experience with the fuel scarcity in the past week?
Well, the first scarcity in the past week has led to loss of man-hour we have to now queue to get fuel. I remember that I posted something on my X, which is Twitter, I think sometimes this week, where I bought a liter for 850 naira, not at the black market, but in the filling station in Wuse 2. So I was a bit concerned that I thought, well, on the average was 617 to 690, and NNPC want to queue longer hour, you have to do that. But this is the real interpretation of the regulation. If you deregulate and you don't have enough supply, it means the citizen will have to scramble for the limited available supply. And what that will mean is that price will go up. That is why, as much as we want to implement laws of economics, there are assumptions that we must carefully observe. What is the assumption? If you want prices to come down and you float or you deregulate, supply is very key more than demand. So the supply or disruption in our supply chain is capable of influencing price. And in a case where maybe some filling stations don't want to increase their prices, what will happen? What will happen will be that there will be long queues. There will be man-hour loss. And all of those have implication on our GDP. Because if people are not working, if you are queuing when they are supposed to be at work, when they are supposed to be contributing to national growth and business growth, it certainly will have impact.
Engineer, what was your own experience in the past week?
Thank you very much. I think I had the first challenge with it last Sunday when I was about to go to church, and I saw a very long queue, and I had to buy black market, and going and coming back to my own church, I had to spend 30,000 for that day, buying 30 liters from the black market. And so between that time and now, I have bought between 20 to 30,000 daily. And that means a huge loss to me as a person. And I think to everyone who puts his or her cars on the road all through this week, the challenges are the same. Except you are willing to go stay in the filling station for hours, which I am not willing to do. And to that extent, that is the loss we suffered. Of course, NNPC has come out to say it's a challenge, logistics of movement of the crude from the fuel from the various coastal areas to the city that has been the problem. But of course, there are a huge number of challenges, and we need to deal with them. Otherwise, we'll continue to have this intermittently, no matter how much government tries to solve it.
Another reason NNPC gave was flooding.
Yeah.
Yeah, due to the rainy season.
Yeah.
But fuel scarcity has, since I was born, I've known that fuel scarcity is a constant thing. Do you think these are excuses that the NNPC is just giving?
For the moment, it looks genuine because we already have bad roads that is now compounded by flooding, which limits the ability of tankers to move from those coastal areas out. Now, the issue is, why should we be in 2024, why should we be using tankers to move fuel around the country? So the distribution chain is the problem. Now, if we have, for instance, the depots functional across the country, wherever they are, there can be stocks of fuel. We can't have that because most of the depots are not functional. The distribution chain that supplies to these depots are not functional in many cases. And to that extent, you can assume that 10 years to come, if we don't change how the distribution network is done, we're going to continue to have this problem. If we have, for instance, the rails functional, Where else in the country in the world, do you find people using tankers to move fuel for 1,000 kilometers? You don't find that elsewhere. So the rails need to work. The pipelines need to work. And then we can take the burden off the road. And we have no challenges, whether there is flood or no flood.
Yeah.
That's the only way to deal with it.
Paul, what are the economic factors? What do you think are the economic factors contributing to this ongoing issue, which is continuous in this country?
Well, lack of economic coordination. We know that we don't refine this oil in our country. So first of all, when it gets to our shores, the vessels are subjected to the other necessary rules of waiting for days. Even it also accounts for high cost because you have to pay for demurrage, even though we know it's an essential commodity that we consume in our nation. So we are all paying for the delays and the demurrage that's accrued. That's one. Two, we knew there will be flood. It's not new. In fact, an agency of government has announced that there will be part of Nigeria will be flooded in part of June, July, and August. We knew. What did we do? We knew there was going to be flood in 2009, 2010. We knew there was going to be flood in 2021, 2022. And the flood will not come without cost. It's not just our crops, it will also affect the price of rice. It's not just the price of rice, it may affect the price of PMS. And that's what we are paying for. So we are paying for our inability to self-organize our system. So this cost is economics, because that means part of the money you would have used to have improved living standard, you have to depart, you have to leave some of them without without enjoying part of quality of life that you deserve. So all of these have implication. Somebody, imagine a barbering salon or barbers within a region where they were buying fuel before at 189, suddenly 450, later 615, and now 850. How much do you think they will barb? Hold it a moment. Go to your hairdressing salon. Go to tailors, fashion designers. What will happen to price? And those are real small businesses that we're trying to support. Prices of commodity will go up. Do I think this will affect inflation? Yes. Inflation will go up. If people say, no, don't worry, I want to carry Afro and compete alone. And ladies say we want to go on low cost. We don't want human hair, whether bone straight or bone bend. We don't want to use anyone anymore. What happens? It's funny when you lead to unemployment. Another economic implication. Oh, okay, if this persists, what does it mean on GDP? Now you might see nominal GDP increase in number because there are more money. But what happens to real GDP, which economists is concerned about? When you divide that by high inflation, then the price comes down. What does it mean for quality of money? The naira that we owe, exchange rate. It also has negative. These are macro implications. You might not see it as individual. So it is so very unnecessary and detrimental to our economy. It is not what we want to think about. And that is why supply chain disruption is one major concern NNPC should be mindful about, and not to say that, oh, we know it's flawed. Yes, it's flawed. It is the role of government to ensure that we manage a drainage system, flooded areas, provide alternative routes, such that we don't keep having these experiences that we have had over the years. Is this the first time there is flood? No, I remember, I don't know whether I spoke with you and your colleague, or I spoke on another show, another platform, where I said, that was around May. I said, let me tell you for free. It's not prophecy, but there will be floods this year. What are we going to do about it? So it flooded again. Now, the flood is not coming free. It's coming at a cost. Who pays this cost? I don't know. But we are paying already.
Can you touch a bit on how it affects or impacts inflation rates?
So how it affects inflation rate, which was the background I laid just before you asked this question, is what is sold as a cost component. And one of the essentials for production is energy. So what does that mean? You are seated there, you are able to speak because you have energy. I can respond to you because of energy. Engineer can also make contribution because of it. People are opening their eyes, talking to us, watching at home. You know, the person behind the camera, energy, power. Imagine there is blackout here. Just imagine. And the TV screens are black. And people that are supposed to watch are black. Everywhere is blackout. What happens? It reduces performance. It reduces efficiency. So people will go to extra mile to consume what they feel is necessary. One of the things is this program. So people will want to put fuel in their petrol, whether it's past their neighbor, even though you have to be careful to pass your neighbor now because the cost is 165,000 naira just to pass your neighbor. So you better leave your neighbor alone and let your neighbor be on his own and you're on your own. What am I saying in essence? All of these costs have implications. So the man that has spent more money to fuel his small generator, to fuel his barbering salon, to do his... So all of these will now reflect in their costs. What will happen to cost? It will go up. Now, what inflation measures is basket of commodity, which the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics calls the price index. We look at what is the average increase in price level. And what, we call fuel equalizers. Everybody must buy it, whether you are rich or poor. Even if you have no car, you have no generator, you want to move from one point to another. The bus driver that bought at relatively high price, for instance, engineer bought 1,000. Imagine he has a car business or bus business, and his driver already bought at 1,000. How much do you think it will charge? It will charge more. Yeah. So the corn seller by the roadside that's just gone to the farm to pick some corn and is coming to sell at the city center, if we had it, even if the corn seller wants to just roast this by the roadside, it does not even enter, the price will still increase. You say, why? He did not buy the PMS that is increased. It's increased because he's living in the same economy. If he wants to buy another thing, price of that thing would have increased. So what do you have? Inflation may become sporadic. That is why pricing is equal to power, the way power is politics. So you have to look for the common factor, common index between inflation, which of course is price rise, which of course, if you want to remain in power, you have to be sure that you bring power relatively. Then you can remain in power. After that, then you can see how to manage politics. So they are all very essential, especially price. If you check, there is unemployment. The way people will talk about unemployment, the public, will not be as much as how they will talk about high cost of living. They may not call it inflation. We can't all be economists, but they will tell you, everything dear now. Quote and unquote. Local parlance, life don't dear. Rent, 13 million to rent a factory to 79 million. Inidu here in Abuja. And I'm telling you from personal experience, 13 million to 79 million. For a rice miller, how much do you think a bag of rice would be? So you now have to pay more for either diesel or PMS. But in July, how much do you think a bag of rice would be by December? And someone said, everybody should leave rice, start eating corn. If you do that, the price of corn will jump by 3 because of demand. And we don't have enough supply. So people think it's just about taste. Don't worry, we don't need this rice again. What we should be drinking now is Gary. How much is Gary today? So no matter where you focus on, supply strategy, your supply chain must be excellent. Then your supply side must be robust. If you don't want to do it, you are not ready for that economic solution.
Oh, you said a lot, but let's move over to engineer. Now, what solutions could improve the efficiency of Nigeria's fuel distribution?
Thank you very much. Just to quickly add something to what he said before. Now, transport could mean the difference between poverty and riches for especially the middle and low-income earners.
Yeah.
Between last year and now, looking at the transport fare watch from the National Bureau of Statistics, we have had 50% increase year on year on cost of transportation in urban areas without 50% change in income for citizens.
Yeah.
So you have a situation where the cost of transport continue to rise and further complicated by the scarcity, because a number of the taxi drivers, the bus drivers are queued up. They are not on the road to carry the passengers, and so the few who are on the road will increase the cost. Now, all of that is impacting on the well-being of society. What quickly is the solution? Number one, we need to change from where we are. If truly we mean deregulation, NNPC shouldn't be the sole importer of fuel. That's number one. Number two, like he said, we need to have strategic distribution plan beyond announcing that flooding is stopping us from distributing fuel. We should outgrow such.
Yeah.
We should outgrow such.
Be more proactive.
Be more proactive. The NIMED gave a clear roadmap of what is going to happen throughout the year in terms of flooding. So how do you use that as an excuse on why you can't distribute fuel and leading to the crisis, the enormous economic loss we are suffering in the last 1 week? Thank God in the last few days, supply is beginning to increase. Yesterday, between yesterday and now, I saw that there is
I noticed that too.
So we need to be strategic. And number two, we need to, a lot has always been said about the rail being developed. We need to see beyond where it is, such that we can have our distribution network of PMS done on the rail rather than on the road. Because as long as we remain on the road, this crisis will not end. And that's a very fundamental area we need to deal with. And then, of course, the pipelines must also come back. There are no shortcuts to dealing with efficient fuel distribution outside ensuring that we go out of the road. You can't use the road to say you are efficient in distributing PMS across Nigeria because it's a very big country. And as long as the supplies are not straight, then you're going to continue to have this break scarcity from time to time, and we need to run away from it.
Okay, Paul, what policy measures should the government consider now when it comes to stabilizing fuel prices in particular and supply as well?
Okay, so, well, I will respond to you from your last word, supply. Everything that we make supply to outweigh demand or supply to be consistent. But I will look at it from the root cause of challenge that we have. So the Almighty God has already blessed us with crude. We don't have to do so much. But we cannot exploit the crude by ourselves as a nation. So we bring in the IOC to help us, even though the fact that we are black does not mean we don't have stuff in our head. It just means that we just decided not to be serious with ourselves. So IOC are here, good enough, but can we have functional refinery? Africa's richest man has a company with Nigeria 20% stake in the company. But do you know that the company complained that it's being sabotaged? Nigeria's interest is in business. But
in fact, I don't know if you saw the news where the Dangote refinery had to buy crude from the US.
Liters from US.
The news came in yesterday.
That's what I'm saying. So
it's wild.
Already, you have brought exchange rate concerns in the factor. So no matter how we are trying to stabilize price and all of those, we're exposed from that loophole. So how do we do everything to start local production because of sustaining the market, predictability of flows, and so on and so forth? Primarily, how do we connect different parts of Nigeria, whether in regions or in zones or in states, with pipelines? It is the responsibility of the state to protect the pipelines. Method, approach, strategy may not be up for discussion on the screens, on national screens like this, but we must protect it. I can tell you there are countries that are larger than Nigeria. They have protected it. There are countries that have more security challenges that have protected it. The challenge is examples. Those who vandalized our pipelines yesterday, luckily they were caught. What happened? They know someone somewhere, or we need to have a parley, or we have to create a ministry for those who destroyed the nation. And it's still being created. So we created ministry for them. What are we saying? in essence. Are we saying continue or hold on, don't worry, we don't want you to, but look at what we have now given you, a pie, a share of the national cake, so that you can have, we have to be serious with ourselves. If we want to be the most desirable black nation that we want people to come to. So, if we don't have all of this, and like I said, leadership is not easy. I don't envy those who have been in government or those who want to go to government. But if we must, as a people, we must understand that it's not going to be fun fair. We cannot be throwing Babariga in the space or Agbada in the space.
True.
It's a place where we need to work. It's a place where we need to be more purposeful to ensure that there are linkages. Our challenge is when it gets to the depot, the time is spent and the linkage. All of these are accountable for supply chain, but the root cause must be solved, produced locally, and make sure that in no time it's available. When we catch someone, because we will catch, what we exchange on, will it be naira or punishment?
Would you like to add to that?
Yes.
Yes, please.
There is the need to emphasize the fact that Port Harcourt refinery maintenance and restoring it into refining, dates have been given, and we are not seeing the end of it. And that shows who we are. The commitment to change from where we are to where we ought to be is not there, as far as I'm concerned. Because what really is the problem of our refineries that they cannot be fixed and we cannot build new ones? This is something to deal with. The second aspect is the fact that while we say there is fuel scarcity, filling stations that have not been selling fuel, that we know are shut down, all started selling fuel because there is scarcity. Where did they get their supply from? Which talks about the need to instill discipline in our system. How did they get fuel? If you go along Maraba down to Kefi, all the filling stations that have never been selling fuel from January, as soon as there is scarcity, they got fuels to sell. Those selling, hawking fuel, where did they get the supplies from? It's from the same filling stations. It's from the same sources where the main filling stations were supposed to get from, which means we are not really in control of the entire system. There is a need for the enforcement organ to ensure that our fuels are going to the right places and are being sold from the right sources. Only then we can ensure that we are not just supplying and then going to wrong sources and they are monopolizing the economy.
Before we go, what are the long-term things that could be done to secure fuel distribution here in Nigeria and security as well?
Well, a number of things could be done to ensure. One of the things could be done is functional depots in different regions and ensure that there is significant number as minimums, the floors, such that we don't wait until it is exhausted before we start looking at solutions. Two, we need to look at different case scenarios. How many times have we been here? Since I was born, I've seen, I think I started going to primary school knowing about fuel scarcity. In fact, it was not PMS scarcity, it was kerosene scarcity that I grew up to know. So, and I can tell you from history of scarcity to date that supply chain has not been managed properly over the years. Now, knowing things about economy and supply chain, I think for us to have a long-term solution, we need to look at different components of that have cost us challenges and led to several scarcities. How do we have alternatives, solutions, and make them macro and more robust? Two, how do we allow private sector? Engineer mentioned about Port Harcourt refineries, and I remember that since 2000, in recent time, to my mind, we'll be speaking of Port Harcourt refinery coming mainstream since 2012, when President Jonathan first announced the removal of subsidy, and he promised that by 2013, it was going to come to mainstream. President Buhari had a huge record of promises, but failed regarding the return of the refineries. In fact, it started with 4, later with 3, later with 2, and now Port Harcourt refineries. Unfortunately, not one of the promises respected, Mr. President. Now, we have seen the incumbent have promised twice. The dates have changed. You know what matters? What matters is you cannot want to run economy and you also want to be a socialist, or you also want to manage everything by yourself. No. those refineries, we have no business managing them by ourselves. As at the time they were sold to the private sector, or part of the shares were given out to the private sector, we should have waited to see it through. Look at what Dangote is doing for such company to cry out. You know, you don't expect the rest of the world to have several interests to just watch Nigeria say you are now independent. It's like fighting for freedom. Fuel is life. It's like data. It's air. You breathe it in. Without it, nothing will move. We'll be back in the 30s, in the 1830s. So for us to be free indeed, we must have significant sufficient. And to have this, for me, because of this structure that we have, which is not exactly perfect, we need to have depots, not just in the Niger Delta region, or one in Kaduna and Abuja, in areas that matters. And pipelines must be connected to all those places. We should banish movement because of how environmental unfriendly that it even is, because of diesel and the emissions that we have all around our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer and Paul, for coming back and for your insightful conversation in addition to this for scarcity topic. Let's hope that the government listens and adheres to, what both of you have said today, and let's hope that fuel scarcity is not a topic of conversation again in Nigeria in the foreseeable future. All right, that's it for the lifestyle segment of the weekend show. Now we'll bring you sports. Stay with us.